Hey, yeah, this is Sydney, and I am here to talk us through the astrological weather for November 12th through the 18th, 2025. Now, that is going to be the Wednesday through the Tuesday. That's just what my recording schedule will allow for. And we're in the final week before a new moon in Scorpio. Some little housekeeping things. Please like and subscribe. It's how I meet new clients and also my peers so that we can collaborate. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a crazy week. I was traveling for my other job, which is burlesque, and getting to teach some workshops on production and walking. And it was just a really lovely time to get to connect with some new babies in that world. And it's just been such a strange week astrologically, right? I mean, I think we're all really kind of going through it, just the general level of exhaustion around what's going on. It just seems relatively relentless and unrelenting in so many ways. I'm recording this on Tuesday, November 11th at 10:04 a.m. It's the very end of Sagittarius rising in the sky, and we have a cute Leo moon. We're in that third quarter crisis of consciousness closing square before we get to that new moon that will be on the 19th, which will be in next week's forecast. Some other things that I want to note about the kind of general housekeeping of things. Where are we at? We still have a lot of water in the sky. So I think we're all still very much experiencing this like amplification of feeling, depth of feeling, the drama of feeling in so many ways. I mean, we do have a Leo moon right now, and Leo moons do like to be the drama sometimes. Yeah. But I just want to get into it, I think, is where I'm at today. We don't have a lot of Ptolemaic aspects between any of the outer planets. It's not to say that it won't be a dramatic week because a lot of things that happened in the past are being carried forward. We are in Mercury retrograde now. Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. He will moonwalk all the way back into Scorpio before coming back through. So know that right now, everything that we are maybe having conversations about, sharing agreements with, are things that we might have to do more than once, especially because we do have Mercury in a mutable sign, which usually means a duality. So don't be surprised. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. This particular Mercury retrograde period is going to be very spicy. There's a co-presence, at least until Mercury goes back into Scorpio, with Mars in Sagittarius during this time too. So there is a lot of, I want to say, like verbal conflict and sparring, especially around maybe our ideological beliefs, the things that we philosophize about, our truths, things like that. I think we're speaking in ways that are potentially too big for our britches, and we might get checked on that. So this is a really good time, as always, with most Mercury retrograde periods. Slow down. Check the fine print. Be aware of whether you are sharing your truth as a universal truth instead of just being like, well, I believe, right? So just like one of my listeners was saying last week on my Instagram, they're like, oh, so I really need to watch my mouth. And I'm like, yeah, we really need to watch our mouths. And I also think that we really need to be careful about what truths we're implanting inside of our own psyches, the things that we're telling ourselves, right? That this is right, this is wrong, this is the ultimate truth, that sort of thing. So watch your mouth. Okay, so let's get into the week. So we are in November 12th, 2025. Wednesday is Mercury's day. Mercury days, it's Mercury retrograde. Really process what we're thinking. You know, it's a time for maybe writing down your ideas onto paper before you share them with other folks. Mercury days can be a time for short distance travel. And I forgot to mention earlier in kind of the prelim of this podcast, things around transportation, as we weren't aware of what's going on with all of the airports and everything like that, I think is going to be really, really different. Like, I think that this period of time with Mercury retrograde, with its ruler being also retrograde, Jupiter in Cancer is also retrograde, means for even spicier times when it has to do with travel. And I think this is short distance travel, and I think this is long distance travel. So certainly with flights, be careful in how you are, if you're going to be traveling for the holidays or booking your flights for the holidays. Read the fine print, make sure that those dates are correct, get the travel insurance. I cannot stress enough. If you can afford to, please do. And if not, really read everything. Look at your calendar, look at the date, look at the calendar again, look at the date, sort of thing. So Wednesday, 4:11 a.m., we're going to get a moon trine Chiron, enabling, some self-healing here, and it could be just around like our identity, how we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and how we want to show up in the world. This is a fire trine, so it can be passionate, but these are also two signs, the moon in Leo and Chiron in Aries, that really have to do with the self. These are also two signs that the sun loves to be in, which is about our creative identity and sharing who we are. And so utilizing this time to maybe kind of feel like we have a certain inner wisdom about how we want to show up and be good to ourselves. Later on in the morning, we're going to kind of start to traverse a little bit dangerous territory. 7:13 a.m., we're going to get the moon quincunx Saturn. Moon quincunx Saturn is always some sort of emotional adjustment, perhaps to the authority or the structures that we've set up in our lives, the sort of work we do. We might have hit a little bit of a limit, and now we need to change our trajectory just a little bit of a way. This can create a bit of friction, a bit of anxiety, a bit of nervousness in how we do that. We kind of stay in this space. 3:04 p.m., we're going to get a quincunx to Neptune, which is at that 29th degree Pisces, right? So it's anoretic. It's speaking very loudly in these kind of watery, imaginative, maybe thought patterns, psychic realms and things like that. And with the moon quincunx Neptune, the moon is our emotional body, and Neptune can be, it's like about illusions. It's about, I think, like a larger cosmic perception. It can certainly be about like our beliefs. There is a confusing aspect, like Neptune is a slippery wicket. Certainly. And so I think with this quincunx to Neptune, I think we need to maybe make some adjustments to what we ultimately think that we believe or know that we believe, or how we want to show up in order to do that for ourselves, right? 3:15 p.m., this is when spice is real spicy. We get Mercury conjunct Mars, and this is going to be at 6 degrees Sagittarius. So this is Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars. Mercury-Mars conjunctions and aspects can be very spicy. They can be argumentative. I think because we have the Sagittarius thing here. This can definitely be, themes around like our self-righteousness, our truths and beliefs, and you're fighting for what we are saying is our truth, right? This can also be a period of time where things around transportation become quite heightened and interesting. People behaving in passionate ways on the road, could be a little bit of a road rage kind of moment. So I really do think that once we get into the afternoon, we need to be careful, super careful. Yeah. We have moon square Uranus. This can be surprising emotional insights. This can be emotional shock, certainly. And we are being invited to really kind of stay open and to kind of go with the flow. And I don't necessarily know how that's going to feel. This square is happening at 29 Leo and 29 Taurus. These are fixed signs. So it's like a shock that shifts our perspective in some sort of way. And these are anaretic degrees. So there is something ending, finalizing here. It's a quick moving aspect because the moon does move quickly, because we are going to get the moon going into Virgo, tummy ache Virgo at 3:51 p.m. So we're going to get a vibe shift, right? So there's this really playful, kind of self-identifying, maybe a little bit selfish, a little bit dramatic, but certainly can be also warm-hearted, generous sort of moon in Leo. And it transfers into, or it shifts into Virgo, which is correcting the ways that a moon in Leo might have gone a little bit over the top, right? So a moon in Virgo now says, okay, what's on my checklist? What do I need to get done? Let's clean up. Let's clean house. Let's be of service, that sort of thing. It's a health moon. It's like, let's check in the health of this. Like, are there cobwebs? Let's clean that up. Let's do all of the things that we need to do. It becomes about work, and it becomes about our day-to-day kind of things that we need to do. At 6:50 p.m., we're going to get the moon quincunx Pluto, which can be I think, psychologically kind of frustrating quincunx. We're really needing to eliminate something. We have it, the moon is in that first degree of Virgo, so it has this like fresh energy. I got to get it done. But maybe because of this aspect to Pluto's kind of asking like, hey, before we get deeper in here, or as you get deeper into this sign, what if we did something in a little bit different a way, and you make that psychological adjustment now so it's a little bit easier for you? So if you find that you're needing to make some sort of psychological adjustment around like your habits and how you show up in order to, do you or do this thing called life, just, allow it to happen. The moon in Virgo is a mutable sign. So, really try to go with the flow. November 13th, Thursday. Thursday is Jupiter's day. Jupiter has just gone retrograde at about 25 degrees Cancer. So he's very, 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 very slow. And he's going to go all the way back to, I believe, if I remember correctly, about 15 degrees Cancer before he goes forward. And so all of those spaces that Jupiter was making these aspects with your planets might have when it comes back over those again, should it be within those degree ranges, maybe there's some sort of maybe reintegration of the various lessons that you've learned, or some sort of calibration around the ways that maybe you overexpanded, or maybe you didn't expand enough, and then Jupiter kind of wants to come around and do a little bit of a correction. Even though Jupiter is now debilitated by being retrograde, it's still exalted in Cancer, and he loves being in Cancer. And also Jupiter is a benefic. So ultimately, he's doing a good job. He just maybe has a little bit, some delays in how things will get done. We don't have a lot of aspects today. We have some spicy super morning aspects with the moon square Mercury and Mars. And so I really think that being careful with our energy, especially very, very early in the morning when we're waking up with that moon square Mars, use your energy for good here. Certainly could cause some irritation. If you are a very early morning worker, just be cautious of, people on the road at this time. And mutable squares really kind of invite us to take a flowing sort of action, to take a being willing to move with it sort of action. It doesn't feel very direct. There's no like super direct way through. It's more of a meandering sort of feeling or thing. Moon sextile Venus is a really lovely aspect. It is an invitation to feel maybe comfort or, a sense of peace or harmony or pleasure. And certainly this is kind of an interesting sextile because we do have the moon in Virgo and Venus in Scorpio. Venus has just entered a period from 7 degrees to almost about 11 degrees where she has a little bit more dignity because she's in her bound. And so she has a little bit more resources. So I'm hoping that these kind of couple of days where Venus is in this 7 to 11 period, that we're able to experience pleasure on a level that feels a little bit better, maybe a little less obsessive. But this is a nice day, I think, to kind of be very curious and investigative. And also, there's like a really deep care kind of thing to this because Moon in Virgo cares a lot. And Venus in Scorpio is obsessed and possessed by its desires to merge. And so there's something here that says like, yeah, there's a nice working aspect between these two about our habits and our values, how we feel and what brings us pleasure. So let's try to take advantage of that nice little sextile early in the morning at 7:46 a.m. Moon sesqui square Chiron, 8:17 a.m. Cranky. Just cranky. Just know if you're feeling a bit sensitive, a little bit put on edge, and certainly kind of more nervous than normal. That should pass in a few hours' time. There's not really a lot of aspects in the middle of the day, so it's kind of unfortunate because I feel like the moon sesqui square Chiron kind of leaves us hanging for a bit. And then at 11:30 p.m., we're going to run into a sesqui square with Pluto, which I think is also going to lend a feeling of anxiety or obsession, wanting to get or needing to get to the bottom of things, and needing to pick things apart and to like separate wheat from the chaff kind of thing because of that moon in Virgo. We are also, this is going to be midday, actually. We're going to get the moon conjunct the south node. And so there's some sort of leaving, some sort of letting go, some sort of elimination, right? The south node is all about the past, right? And so we could have something coming up that has to do with the past, relationships with women, the stories that we tell ourselves, the emotional stories that we tell ourselves about, maybe our perceived imperfections. So all that to say is, I think the 13th, Thursday, is touch and go. I think that there's a little bit of help with that moon sextile Venus mid-morning. But other than that, I think we are really maybe feeling a bit on eggshells for this day. So don't make any rash decisions. Really just kind of breathe through it all. Okay, November 14th, Friday. Friday is Venus's day. Fortunately, Venus has some dignity, even though Venus is in her detriment in Scorpio, which, in terms of dignity, the dignity scheme in astrology really means that like she does it differently. She does it differently than Venuses that have all of the resources that she would want, right? So we do know that a Venus in Scorpio is extremely passionate, can be very, very possessive, very fixed. Like once a Venus in Scorpio has its sights on you, that's it. Till death do us part. A Venus in Scorpio can get that kind of obsessive sort of desire and love. Venus in Scorpio isn't bad per se. And I hope that anybody that has Venus in Scorpio thinks of it as like their superpower, that they can stay focused for as long as they do. And they can live in that spooky, deep, deep sort of love and affection that definitely can make people feel absolutely intensely cared for. So, no shade to a Venus in Scorpio. All that to say is, okay, not a lot of aspects again today. We are going to get a little disseminating sextile from the moon to the sun, 11:20 a.m. And so I think it's a nice sextile to like get some stuff done. Certainly the moon in Virgo has a need to check things off the list, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to clean my house. I'm going to do my accounting. I'm going to make a pot of soup, that sort of thing. And it could feel also a bit grounding too, because we do have, the moon is in a earth sign. So thankfully, because we have so much water, we have this fire in the sky with the Mercury, Mars, we have some earth in the chart, but it's really, Uranus and Taurus, which can be a little, not really stable, honestly. So now we have the moon trying to kind of hold it down for everybody in the chart right now. We're going to get the moon quincunx Chiron at 1:12 p.m. We need to make some sort of emotional adjustment in order to facilitate our own healing. So if some feelings come through, it feel a little bit prickly, a little bit rough, just kind of sit with it and wiggle through it a bit. We get a lovely aspect of the moon sextile Jupiter, and that's going to be at 4:09 p.m. Moon sextile Jupiter really can allow us to, I would say, like, engage in things that feel really pleasant, things that help you feel like you can, like, emotionally expand or breathe. Another really good working aspect, just in general, to engage in things that are more Jupiterian, philosophical stuff around school. And there, however, is some mixed reception here. So I think that might mean that try to not do too much in terms of the ways that you want to do that moon in Virgo thing, because the moon loves Jupiter in Cancer, right? Because Jupiter in Cancer is a sign that the moon loves being in. But Jupiter doesn't love being in the sign of Virgo. In fact, that's a place of its detriment. And so it's like, I don't have all the resources I want here. So there's some mixed testimony here of how this could go. And so with that amplification of the moon from Jupiter, let's just be cautious that in all of the ways that we want to get stuff done today, that we are really good about how we use our energy to do that. I think that's the kind of the big thing I wanted to say about that. 4:30 p.m. we're going to get the moon opposite Saturn. This never feels great. It always feels like some sort of something comes up, right? Where like maybe we are having some emotional problems with like authority figures, our bosses. We could feel a little bit blue. We are aware of a limitation that is here, and that doesn't feel super great. It is a mutable opposition. So, oppositions have the nature of Saturn. It really wants to halt and limit and restrict. There's some sort of emotional boundary here, but it is very kind of wavy, right? I think of like, it's mutable, it moves, it's shifting always. And so like whatever boundary we have come up against, it's not firm, but it doesn't mean you push that boundary, right? It just means, okay, now I'm aware of this thing and let's take a step back from it. And I think with that sextile from Jupiter, we might be inclined to maybe push, but let's not. We're going to get Venus sesqui square Saturn at 8:01 p.m. And this is a frustrating aspect. Sesqui squares are square and a half. This is a really frustrating aspect that is going to have to do with like maybe our values inside of relationships, how we feel secure inside of relationships or finances, the things that we might value about the work that we do. I think relationship stuff and like maybe also some stuff around like who has the authority here and what part of our relationship could be coming up here. And certainly anything having to do with finances at this time could be, it's just frustrating. Do not push, right? The sesqui square says like, I am trying to get this thing done. I'm trying to make these things work, right? I'm trying to take action over here, but I continue to hit some sort of, it's like digging, but you can't move forward. Like your car is stuck in the mud and just really can't move forward. So don't push. Saturday, November 15th. Saturday, November 15th, we are going to get the moon opposite Neptune. It's at 12:50 a.m. Not super big deal, but we could find ourselves feeling pretty emotionally overwhelmed or confused. Maybe someone is trying to confuse you, but you are aware of it. It's mutable. You're trying to get to the end of it. This is at 29 degrees, so there could be something important here, but most of us are asleep, so I try not to pay too much attention to those things, though it is on some of my stuff. Anyways, 1:08 a.m., we're going to get the moon trine Uranus. This is also at 29, so it's right after that. The surprising new ways of feeling. It has to do with those last ending degrees. And so maybe we shift, we emotionally shift in ways that feel good for us to be able to do so. 1:43 a.m., we're going to get the moon entering Libra. So moon ingress into Libra really makes us need to relate to other people, need to engage with things that are pleasant, beautiful, like art. This is a need for diplomacy, balance, fairness, justice. When the people go into the sign of Libra, right? Moon being the people in the mundane chart, our focus now becomes on equality. What is fair? How do we achieve this fairness for everybody? It is looking to connect. Moon trine Pluto allows us to go a bit deeper, a bit more intense, and also allows us to maybe emotionally get to the bottoms of some things around how we are connecting with other people or how we're connecting to our communities as well. We're going to get the sun at quincunx Chiron at 9:24 a.m. This is such an interesting quincunx because I really do think that we're making an ego shift in order to work on some of the healing that we need to do. Like we are an ongoing project in our healing. And the sun is in Scorpio, and Scorpio is a regenerative sign that also has to do with elimination. It really has to do with like a depth and intensity and fixity. And so again, quincunx is a adjusting aspect. And so I think that it's almost like our soul, our ego is able to make some sort of shift here in order to heal the identity. So, but it could also, people might be feeling a little sensitive. This is a sensitivity aspect. Moon sextile Mercury at 9:40 a.m. This really gives us the ability to speak on the things that we are feeling. How we feel and how we speak are in alignment. This is definitely social. We need to remember that Mercury is still retrograde. So the things that we are sharing at this time, we might need to share again. One of the things also about Mercury retrograde is not everybody's listening. And maybe you have to ask people, like, do you actually understand what I say? So even though we are able to kind of go within and figure out what's going on for us and be able to share those things, maybe it's not necessarily being received in the ways that we want it to be. Nevertheless, we have the ability here with this sextile to really be able to explain ourselves and speak up for ourselves in the ways that are harmonious to our inner and outer worlds. We're going to get the moon sextile Mars. This is going to be at 6:16 p.m. And this is another really good working aspect to get things done. Our needs and our desires are working together, and they have the ability to work together. And so this day really feels far more productive than the previous 2 days, or like a flow, right? I think that we have the ability to just kind of flow through the day, notwithstanding that quincunx to Chiron. If we can just kind of be in check and do the adjustments around the ways that we're feeling really sensitive, this day could feel really pleasant, all things considered, considering the world that we live in. November 16th, 2025 is Sunday. Sunday is the sun's day. We're in the last final days of regenerative Scorpio, sitting at that 24th degrees of Scorpio. And so we have just gone into Saturn's bound. It's an approaching trine today of the sun and Saturn. It's really kind of starting to light up this grand water trine. So we just need to be aware that the emotions will be flowing, right? We still have Mercury and Mars in the same sign. They're both in Sagittarius. So we know that we could still be a little bit self-righteous or passionate about the ways that we speak. Passionate, I think that's a really good word for the trine for everything, and also the passionate Sagittarius stuff that's going on right now. And we also have, and it's forming now, it'll get there in the next few days, but we have this kind of shifting kite because we have the trine with the sun, with Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. But then we have this Uranus here that has the sun getting closer and closer to a perfect opposition. So it's kind of lighting up this kite to hopefully have us kind of, with kites, fly away. It's going to bring up something about this Uranus in Taurus situation. And when Uranus first went into Taurus, my brain just went like occupy and like the bank stuff. Like there's something here that I think is financial, especially with the opposition that will be forming between the sun and Uranus. These are the signs of money and security, assets, certainly. So all that to say is I think this is going to start to light up, and I think things are going to really come up that have to do with maybe even like our emotional, how we feel about our security, lighting up those things. And certainly we know we have a lot of stuff going on with like SNAP and how the government is or is not actually taking care of its constituents, things like that. I have digressed. I love to do that. Not a lot of aspects for Sunday, the sun's day. But the aspects that we got are not super great, though. We do have that sun starting to form that trine to Jupiter, which will not perfect until 9:07 p.m. But I'm hoping that that's going to kind of help us through the earlier parts of the day, because we have Mars sesqui-square Chiron. This is at 1:59 a.m. So we kind of wake up, I think, feeling pretty aggravated, irritated, and certainly passionate. The sesqui-square is in fire signs. And so there is like an intuitiveness and a passion here. And maybe it's like a desire to take some sort of action to facilitate and help ourselves heal or engage in healing modalities, but there's a little bit too much going on. And so I think it kind of leaves us feeling fired up and frankly a bit anxious about it all when everything is kind of going through. Moon square Uranus, surprising, shocking, kind of maybe emotionally upsetting. I think that this is going to kind of lend to a not feeling any sort of emotional equilibrium. What's interesting about it, though, is that with the moon square Uranus, they're engirdled. Both the moon and Uranus are ruled by this Venus in Scorpio. And so there could be some sort of not feeling any sort of emotional equilibrium as it pertains to how we are in relationship or how we are being provided for or sustained in relationships, and maybe how we want to connect with people now is taken on a very kind of psychologically intense sort of thing, because we have both the moon and Uranus in Venusian signs, and Venus has to do with our values, it has to do with money, it has to do with relationships, it has to do with diplomacy. So there's something here, right? And then Sun trine Jupiter is a nice supportive aspect, 9:07 p.m. There's a flowing, and it's retrograde Jupiter, pardon. This is a flowing aspect that is deeply, I think there's like a spiritualness to it. I think that there's obviously a flow because it is in a trine aspect and that means it's in a Jupiterian aspect. So this circuit of the sun to Jupiter to Saturn is just kind of flowing, intuitive, emotional. I think that there's a little bit of the depth of it feels a little bit of like, it feels goth. There's like a twinge of sadness, a twinge of death, right? Pisces, Cancer even, having to do with the sign of home. And then we have the sign of depth and intensity and of endings and also death. And then we have the sign of Pisces, which is like this spiritual, intuitive, kind of the end of everything, containing everything, sort of the flow here. The vibes are gothy. But it's a supportive trine that really just kind of continues to make the flow of emotions keep going. Monday, November 17th. Monday is the moon's day. We have the moon at the very last degrees of Libra. It is going to go into Scorpio, the sign of its fall, on this day. And that's not going to happen until afternoon. So we are going to get a vibe shift, certainly. We are going to have, the moon is going to now perfect its trine with Saturn at 12:55 a.m. It's a harmonious trine. There is a supportive kind of nature here where Saturn just kind of like holds it down, right? It goes, okay, yeah, we can achieve these things. The sun is about our creative identity and expression, how we show up in the world. Saturn is like how we work, the sorts of work that we choose to do. There can also be, there's stuff around authority, there's stuff around boundaries. And so I really do feel like we have this feeling of, I am sitting inside of a safe container of myself. I feel like I have a good notion of who I am. And again, this also has to do with that harmonious trine it's having between Sun and Saturn and Jupiter. So there's some support here going on. And the Sun is in this last degrees of Scorpio. So it's going to try to wrap up its time. It's going to start to say, okay, let's really eliminate here. So if there's crying, if there's feels and really intense vibes, like allow that to kind of wash through you. So there can be an elimination that happens here. We're going to get a square from the moon to Jupiter, and this is going to be from 25 Libra to 25 Cancer. Jupiter retrograde. Be careful of overdoing it, pushing yourself too far, overindulging. This is definitely an overindulging aspect, I believe. Yeah, nah, just don't do it. Moon quincunx Saturn. Again, this can create some sort of anxiety, uncomfortableness, feeling out of sorts around the sorts of maybe the things that you want to achieve. We're going to get Mercury sextile Pluto at 12:35 p.m. So Mercury retrograde and Pluto direct. And this is, I think that Pluto is going to give us some intensity, some ability to go deeper into things. Not that Sagittarius isn't deep, right? Mercury and Sagittarius. But I think it kind of gives us more ability to get truly into the depth of the matter, maybe of what we're really feeling and what we really believe and what we know to be true. It allows us to be able to maybe eliminate some beliefs here. It gives us the ability to, it gives us the opportunity to, because it's a sextile. It's not a promise. It's an option. Maybe we're thinking really intensely here. This could also mean that some secrets come up, right? Because Pluto is the sign of secrets. And Mercury is the messenger, and Mercury can go to hell, Pluto, and easily traverse those realms, right? Because Mercury is the messenger. He can go anywhere that he needs to go. And so I think it's like he is able to go and bring some things to light. Maybe it has to do with things of a Sagittarian nature, which often has to do with law, can have to do with truth. So I'd be really interested to see kind of what comes up at this time. You know, it is what it is. Moon quincunx Neptune, and then Moon quincunx Uranus. This is an emotionally excitable and anxious filled and uncomfortable little moment to our afternoon. I would say probably starting around the time that sextile happens, around 12:35, all the way through until, that 1 p.m. time. We're not feeling cozy. Let's put it that way. Maybe we're wanting to escape, make some shifts that may or may not be what we wanted. It's going to be at the very last degrees, at 29 degrees. So I think it feels like a sudden cut, a sudden break, a sudden shift, a sudden surprise. We have the moon going into Scorpio at 1:44 p.m. and now she's in the sign of her fall. She does not feel comfortable here, right? Well, now we are deeply internal. The moon goes into a sign that can become very obsessed with its own depths and patterns, emotional patterns. A moon in Scorpio feels so deeply, but doesn't think that other people know that it's angry or upset or feeling really passionate when it literally is seeping around the edges. I feel like I can almost always tell a moon in Scorpio because they kind of hide their emotions until they feel very, very safe. So if you have a moon in Scorpio person in your life, if you can create a container for them to feel extremely safe with you, you might get maybe a 20% of understanding of what they are actually feeling. Good luck to you. As soon as we get that ingress into Scorpio from the moon is going to square Pluto, and that's going to happen at 5:05 p.m. Doesn't feel great. This is emotional power struggles. Maybe someone is trying to manipulate you and you are needing to kind of fight against that, right? There's certainly a power control dynamic here. There could be something coming up with women, the government, or deeper systemic structures. I think of Pluto, the moon being like women. But all that to say, emotionally upset, emotionally intense, very passionate. It's a fixed square. It doesn't want to change. The Pluto is asking the moon to change, eliminate something, give up something here, give up this obsession, give up this, this bit of intensity here. What you think is keeping you secure is not, right? So that's the last aspect of the day. I think this day feels a little bit intense. I think this is the intense day. This is the emotionally, I think the cup overfloweth and things are flowing out. Mercury sextile Pluto. November 18th is Tuesday. Tuesday is Mars's day. We have Mars in Sagittarius. This is a Mars that wants to fight for what it believes in. This is a Mars that has the desire for freedom and truth. I think it's really more one's more subjective truth. This is a Mars that wants to fight for its philosophical ideals, the bigger picture, the bigger story, freedom fighter kind of vibes. So right up at the front, we have Mars sesqui-square Jupiter. Now, Mars sesqui-square Jupiter, I think we need to be very, very careful about how we're using our bodies as soon as we wake up. I think that there will be definitely an overdoing it sort of moment here that is not great. It certainly feels passionate. It almost feels like hitting your head against a brick wall. I think in the ways that we want to fight for the things that we think are right, this could get us into some deep water. Mars in Sagittarius is ruled by that Jupiter in Cancer that is now retrograde. So because of that retrograde nature of Jupiter, it doesn't have it's not doing as good as it used to. And with the sesqui square, it's a square and a half, which often means strife and challenge and fight, right? So, and it's amplifying this with the aspect to Jupiter. It is expanding, certainly, this Mars drive, desire to go off and fight for what it feels is right. So caution yourself. Venus is then going to sesqui-square Neptune. Here's Venus here. Here's Neptune here. I think this feels really passionate, and I think this also feels a bit like we're confused about how we're showing up or being shown up for in relationship. I think this is feeling confused about something that we need to give up, or we're engaging in something that is deluding us or confusing us in some sort of way. What's interesting to me is that, Neptune in Pisces retrograde is, this Pisces is in the sign that Venus loves being in. So there's got to be something here about our ultimate ideals of love. And maybe there's some sort of check where we're oh, we could be feeling kind of down about the realization that the thing that we wanted so deeply in our relationships isn't actually a reality. It almost feels like the bubble bursts in terms of what we truly desire to show up in. The moon is going to sesqui-square Saturn. It's going to sesqui-square Neptune. I think these, again, anxious, frustrated, out of sorts, deeply uncomfortable, not a super great time to, I think, be making any sort of emotional choices for ourselves. And then Mercury is going to enter Scorpio. So on this day, on the 18th, this whole day, Mercury is sitting at 0 degrees, so it's anaretic. So it might have something to say here. something to say about Sagittarian stuff, right? Truths, beliefs, philosophies, maybe something about other cultures, some news about other cultures different from us, or cultural exchange. But Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio. Here, I'm going to just move my clock forward a little bit so you can see it do it. Da, da, da. There we go. Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio, and thus it's going to now be applying to this opposition to Uranus. So, we have an anoretic Scorpio. It's at the end. It is wanting to maybe finish up something here, in this 29th degree. There's a surprise here. There could be shocking news around information, about resources, about money, because of this Uranus Scorpio thing. About this is resources, information. This could have to do with technology that impacts our resources, or the information that we gather about our resources. This could have to do with like banking, right? I think about all of our banking is electronic at this point. It'll be interesting to see kind of what comes up this time for Tuesday. Because it's going to hold, because this does not perfect until Wednesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, probably even Thursday, this Mercury Uranus thing will be in play. We're going to get the moon conjunct Venus. This can feel really pleasant. This can also feel intense because we have the moon in Scorpio with Venus. So, this is like emotionally engaging in pleasure that is taboo, extra dirty. There's the obsession quality here at this time is quite strong. We are gearing up for a new moon that will be happening at the 28th degree. And so we're also going to get a little cazimi here that's going to happen the next day. I will talk about that in the next podcast. But we are gearing up here. So we have the moon coming into the sun, these last degrees. So he's winding down, so we can be feeling tired, exhausted. Certainly the moon in Scorpio can feel really, really intense and passionate and deep and super emotional. There is a lot of water in the sky, so good luck to you. And we have this Scorpio stellium, which is it's ranging this wide range for this. Actually, it's like 15-degree range, but all of these planets are in Scorpio. So we have a heavy dose of scorpionic, investigative, passionate, deep, obsessive. What are the other words? Controlling, other people's resources. I always think of the psychological investigator. It's a great time to do some deep psychological work that is also invested in getting rid of stuff you don't need anymore. That's like the imperative of Scorpio. Is it's so complex. It is the sign of complexity. Taurus, its opposite sign, is the sign of simplicity, right? Whereas Taurus might have A and B, Scorpio has 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4. There's a complex web that happens here. And so when we have this abundance of scorpionic energy in the sky, we go, let's look at the opposite sign for information about what we need to do, which is, in my opinion, it's we engage with complexity to know what we need to get rid of so we can then thus simplify. So with that, that is the end of this podcast. And hopefully I will see you next week for the new moon. Get some good rest, especially on Tuesday, because we are going to be going into the new moon vibes. And the new moon is definitely an interesting one. So I will talk to you then. Take care.